Hello and welcome to Decoding the New Economy. Today we're joined by Brian Solis, author and digital analyst and CEO of Altimeter Systems, isn't it?
It's a principal at Altimeter Group.
Right, okay. Well, to kick off first of all, tell me more about what you're doing at the moment.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's talk about what I'm not doing,
right.
which is sleeping. But other than that, my primary responsibility at Altimeter Group is to study disruptive technology and its impact on business.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of buzzwordy, and what it really means is to look at emergent technology and try to determine which one is actually going to become disruptive, whether it's to behavior of consumers or employees or to business in terms of market, commerce, etc., and just better help businesses make decisions about what to do against disruption. But at the same time, though, I couldn't figure it out just by looking at technology itself, so I had to also become a digital anthropologist to really look at how disruptive technology is impacting human beings. And it was a little bit easier to make sense of all of this change when I could understand why. And all of that work leads to research reports and events, and most importantly, it's what inspires the books that I write.
Right. Now, on those books, a couple of years back, you had The End of Business as Usual. How did that pan out with the predictions in it?
Well, every single one was right. No.
Right.
It was less about predictive and more about prescriptive. So meaning that when you understand how business is being impacted, and there were some pretty grand statements made in that book. I introduced digital darwinism, which was the evolution of society and technology, and compared to how businesses were adapting or not adapting. Another concept introduced in the book was that of Generation C, and this was based on research. It was quite controversial, still is. It basically said we have to stop looking at generations like Y and Z and X and boomers, and really start to look at the behavioral aspects of what we all share across generations and how digital and leading digital lifestyles is affecting us. And what I had found was that, essentially, we're a new group of people that, aside from age, share common interests and behaviors because of digital technology. Fascinating, right? And so I called that Generation C, where the C meant connected. And those have panned out quite well, and research is really starting to back up my work. But after that, I had to come up with another book that was a little bit more, I don't want to say approachable, but I guess approachable is the word we have to use, because what I found from The End of Business as Usual is it was so dire in what I found, and then also in what companies needed to do. And it's not easy, right? You have to change. It essentially becomes a story of change management. But it was a hard to digest book in the sense that what if you're not ready to go lead a change management initiative? Right. So the next book, which was called What's the Future of Business, which was intentionally titled What's the Future because it stands for WTF, was to help people understand what they could do right now and just competing for certain moments of truth without having to bring about change enterprise-wide, but instead bringing about change amongst these individual moments, which was a little bit easier to digest and start to lead change. And so between both books, you get change. It's just you're approaching it one way versus the other. But with WTF, I took a much more human perspective, understanding that you as an individual were going to have challenges. So I called you the hero in the hero's journey and how to sort of bring about change, but also that your customer is having challenges today, specifically your connected customer, and I created a hero's journey for them so that you can see how they needed help in getting through their journey. So, again, it's a long form answer to a simple question, but really what I wanted people to take away was less about the predictions and more about the role that they can play in the future of business.
Yeah, that is a really big question. One of the things that you've been referring to is Scott Galloway's presentation of Winners and Losers. Now, there's some pretty scary predictions that he has in his presentation about where markets are going and where society's going. What sort of challenges do you see amongst that?
Well, I'll tell you, Scott Galloway's actually a friend of mine, and he is quite brilliant and controversial as well. His presentation was meant to shock you, and I'll tell you why he did that. Number one, because that's Scott. But two, is that if you look at the number one reason why businesses do not change, it's because of two reasons. One is there's no sense of urgency to do so, or two, there's no legitimate reason to do so because many are probably profitable today. And and both of those things are not helping companies understand the opportunities that lie ahead when you're competing for the future right now, right? And I think too many businesses are competing for the moment. So guys like Scott or things like digital Darwinism are really meant to just shake people into at least awareness that there is things you have to start to consider.
Now, with the digital Darwinism side, what do you see are the industries that seem to be adapting best to the changing environments?
I'll tell you this: that's too broad of an answer to give you, because too many assumptions, too many generalizations. I will tell you though that specific companies are doing very well.
Yeah.
So, for example, Starbucks, Amazon, Netflix, Tesla. And what all these companies share is that they are not thinking from a legacy perspective about how to compete for the future, right? Not looking to the past to see the future. They're actually inventing the future as they go. And so you could argue that they have the benefit, or they are beneficiaries of not having this legacy to weigh them down. But I don't know, you could also make excuses for anything, I suppose, but I have had the chance to study what these companies are doing. I have access to a lot of these companies, and I understand that they're working just as hard as people who are trying to bring about change in all the wrong ways.
Right.
But I think what they have accepted is that the customer has changed, or that the employee has changed. And now the premise is, what are we going to do about it? Yeah. And when you have purpose or intention, it's very different. And I think that digital Darwinism is sort of favoring companies that at least try, but again, you have companies like Kodak or Blockbuster or Borders, all of whom just competed for the future based on the past, even though the future was changing in front of them.
Now, those examples are really good examples of those businesses that were overwhelmed with that. But what would be your advice to employees within those businesses where maybe the senior management isn't quite as across this as they should be?
Well, this is something that was in my report, that it's a real deep subject. So change agents are needed to bring about change. It's nothing new. It's been all the way through every innovation or revolution within corporate environments. But in my last series of research reports, which were around digital transformation, I had found out that a lot of those leading change were burning out.
Right.
Because maybe they were getting traction, but it wasn't enough, fast enough, or maybe they just weren't able to get the type of support they needed, and so they quit.
Yep.
And it's not uncommon. And in fact, it was so inspiring that I have new research coming out around what I call the Change Agents Manifesto.
Right.
Because one of the quotes sort of inspired me in that one individual who works for a pharmaceutical company, as you imagine, there's regulation, there's legal issues, there's a lack of risk-taking. They had said that her mistake was, or she had said that her mistake was thinking that this was a short race.
Yep.
That she thought everybody would see the opportunity inherent with innovation and change, when in fact it was a marathon. So she burned herself out, not thinking that she was going to bring about change faster. And that, just to wrap up, what that means is that to really bring about change means that you have to dig in because you're ready to do your part. And you can't do it alone.
Sure.
There are strengths in numbers, but you have to take change in small formats, win over the right people, get support from the right people, and you start to see momentum build. It just takes time.
That ties into a constant thing that I've seen in your presentations, and that is that this is not a technology issue. This is a people issue. This is a human issue.
Yeah, which sounds strange coming from a digital analyst.
Right.
No, look, I take briefings from technology companies. I watch technology companies, and I'm fascinated by all of the work that they're doing. And in fact, technology is part of the solution.
Right.
It is also part of the problem, and that a lot of individuals see that technology is sort of the shiny object, the solution to a lot of things. I'll give you an example. So things like internal social networks are the magic solution, or the magical solution for getting people to talk to one another. When in fact, it's actually a people issue. People have to be inspired, they have to see leadership do it, there has to be purpose as to why there's going to be cross-team collaboration or just communication in general. There has to be rewards and incentives for new types of behavior. And so all of those things become people issues, right?
Right.
So I like to think that in an interview with David Thodey, the CEO of Telstra, he believes that people need to be empowered.
Right.
And he's right. He also said in our discussion that for technology to work, it has to scale against a purpose. That's powerful. And that purpose has to be driven by the vision of something that could be better, or something that could be different, something that could be innovative instead of iterative. That's a people thing, you know, and that's a good thing. Then you just use technology to bring that vision to life.
Right. So just to finish up, Brian, normally I ask guests, where do you see the next 5 years? But obviously that is just too big a question there. So where do you see the next 18 months to 2 years going?
Well, look, I think in the next 18 months we could probably have this very same conversation.
Right.
That means that we still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of examples to push forward to show what happens when you do this right and what happens when you do this wrong. I think what's going to happen specifically in 18 months is going to be a tremendous acceleration in innovation and disruption, and then also digital Darwinism and the failure of a lot of big companies or even some mid-sized companies that just didn't start to transform. So we'll see in 18 months this incredible dwindling of businesses that are starting to compete for yesterday, meaning that they're going out of business slowly but surely. But I'll tell you though, in 5 years we're going to have some pretty interesting things, you know, and not to put myself on the line and maybe be proven wrong in the future, but we are going to see the rise of more private networks. We're going to see more ephemeral types of networks and engagement. We're going to see a much more sophisticated user in what they want to share and how they want to share it.
So Brian, thank you very much for your time today. It's been very much appreciated.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Any opportunity to talk about the future or what we can do better as individuals is what drives me every day. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining Decoding the New Economy.